Okay, now we're back in out of the frozen tundra, and we're going to summarize what here happened in session 4 of our review and analysis and evaluation of the Springfield SA35. We started out here in session 4 by replacing out the firing pin spring with the heavy firing pin spring from BHSpringSolutions. We installed the Type 1 safety Sear lever with spring and BHSpringSolutions heirloom grade Masters grips. And that was all we changed. We shot 15 rounds. That recording did not get made because the camera did not stay running. However, we had very, very short extraction distance with the OEM spring from Springfield, and so we decided to replace that out and try the BHSpringSolutions 17-pound progressive recoil spring, and that really put the extraction distance at the optimal point and created excellent cycling. So after we replaced out the recoil spring, we commenced an endurance test, really, 300 rounds. And that is the highest round count in one burst or one extreme test that we've ever attempted, quite frankly. And as a credit to the SA35, my goodness, we got all the way through those 300 rounds. We cooled the handgun. We still had a little daylight left, and we had loaded up 351 rounds, which, if we had been successful in firing those, we would have completed 700 rounds on our first day of live fire testing. In the second magazine, we had a fail to extract. Now, we had not really, the gun had well cooled at this point, and we had not shot enough for really heat to be a factor, so that can be kind of ruled out. We need to find something causative for that fail to extract. So we terminated shooting at that point. We didn't want to use up any more ammunition when we had an abnormality happen. So here are the ingredients. This being High Power University also, this could be a bonus round question on a final exam, I think. Because this one involves some things we've not seen before at BHSpringSolutions in any manufacturer's high power, be attributable to poor extractor performance. And we're not going to get into the details of this one, because this one we're going to get into the details deep in the next session, and in the interest of time. But I want to give you the elements, the clues that we had. The fail to extract involved the empty shell casing staying in the chamber. So this was failure on the part of the extractor to maintain a solid hold on the empty cartridge casing that needed to be extracted. When we took the slide off of the frame, took the barrel out, and inserted a cartridge behind the extractor, we had wobble. No longer was it the solid shake test result that we had before we started shooting. Now we had wobble. When we pressed on the tail of the extractor, and that's on a high power, that's right here. When you press on a tail of an extractor, right underneath the tail here is your extractor spring. This should be very, very firm. When I pressed on the tail of the extractor of the SA35 right after the fail, it was not firm, not like it had been. It was noticeably less resistance on that tail when I was pressing it. So these are the clues that we had. We had wobble in the shake test. Another clue was the nature of the fail being the cartridge casing was left in the chamber, which meant the extractor was not having a firm hold at that moment that it needed to keep the hold on the extracting empty shell casing and remove it from the chamber. And we had an extractor tail that didn't seem as firm as it had seemed before. So what we're saying here is that these kinds of fails, typically, if you know where to look and you know the tests to do, you can get to them without chewing up, hopefully, a lot of more ammunition needlessly in proving that something is not functioning right. Okay, we removed the extractor. The extractor appears to have good integrity, no problem, that we could see visually anyway, and under magnification. Interestingly enough, when we got the extractor spring out, the extractor spring seems to have, complete integrity. It doesn't seem to have any problem. We actually did have a little bit of a difficulty removing the extractor spring, however. So there's your clues for what could be ailing this this SA35 so early in our testing that we're getting marginal on a shake test all of a sudden in testing the extractor. And having, an all of a sudden fail out of a pistol that, looked stone cold reliable to us for 300 rounds in that video. So join us next time in session 5 of BHSpringSolutions Special High Power University series, evaluating and testing the Springfield SA35 High Power. Thanks, folks. Hey guys, Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com. Back again for another session of High Power University and continuing the evaluation of the Springfield SA35. And we're going to make 3 changes in this Springfield prior to firing and provided prior to commencing our testing. And one of those is going to be replacement of the firing pin spring with the BHSpringSolutions heavy firing pin spring for high powers. We're also going to be putting in or installing the positively positioned Sear lever with spring. It's we call it a Type 1 safety Sear lever. It's going to positively position this floating Sear lever, and that's going to allow us a higher degree of margin of safety in our test pistol. And so BHSpringSolutions has a firing pin retaining plate removal and installation tool. Makes this a very, very handy little and quick install. These fast access magnets are available at BHSpringSolutions. Amazing how many guys have picked those up. And so we're going to lay aside the original firing pin spring. What this does not make your firing pin hit harder, being a heavy firing pin spring. This is heavy drop safety protection. And here's what you need to understand about what we mean by that. Your firing pin spring goes in like this. Your firing pin goes in next. That spring is keeping the firing pin from the breech area, and that is your drop safety protection. Now, there is no mechanical drop safety like in the later generation FN and Browning high powers. They had a Type 2 Sear lever that was positively positioned. We're going to positively position that Sear lever, but it does not provide drop safety. Your drop safety protection is that firing pin spring. For our margins of safety at BHSpringSolutions and for our testing, we have this heavy firing pin spring, and so we're going to be installing it because this is for our protection. The implication is in a muzzle drop situation, and this is what I was wanting to explain, is in a muzzle drop situation, a firearm lands on the muzzle on the ground. The firing pin wants to keep going. The firing pin spring is what keeps it from going to the primer. The implication with not enough drop safety protection is with a round chambered in the barrel, a muzzle drop could cause the firearm to fire unintentionally. And so that is not to say that there's anything lacking in Springfield's firing pin spring, other than it does not provide the degree of drop safety protection that the heavy firing pin spring does. So we're opting for the higher degree of safety for our testing. And the Sear lever here, we're going to be replacing with the BH Type 1 safety Sear lever that comes as a kit. As you see it here, it is the Sear lever, a very small spring, and we give you a second chance spring in there as well, because that is a small spring. And also included in this kit is a Sear lever pin. We've identified this Sear lever pin as something that we are going to replace. I want you to see there how that Sear lever pin right there has deformed. It should be round. It's been uninstalled and reinstalled once, and it is causing this Sear lever to be less free floating than we would like it to be. So we're going to replace that pin because we don't want any artificial resistance from that pin on the Sear lever, whether it's a floating or the Type 1 Sear lever. And this is it's a different designed pin, and not sure I've ever seen one exactly like that before, but we're going to get rid of this because it's just not what we're wanting to have in this position on the pistol, and it definitely should not be putting any resistance on the pistol at all. So we'll grab the new Type 1 Sear lever, and our new Sear lever pin that comes in the kit automatically, and then we have our Type 1 Sear lever spring, and that is right here. And I'll show you the reason why we don't send two of them, so you got another one for when you need to replace it someday, because we do expect this to be a rather long life kind of a spring, but the spring is only that size that you see right there, if it even comes out. But we'll be showing that to you again here in just a moment. But we do give you a second chance spring in case this one happens to get away from you. Normally this is a very, very seamless kind of an install. In the top of your Type 1 Sear lever there is a recess hole there. You get your Type 1 Sear lever spring, place it in the hole just like that. Now we'll show you how that looks. See if we can get lucky with the focus there. Okay, and that Sear lever was then going to install in our slide, and I'll tell you what I like to do is I like to come from this direction and just lay on the side like this, line up the hole approximately in your slide right there, and now you're going to come from the opposite side, find the hole in the Sear lever just like that, and your pin punch becomes your slave pin, so to say. And you just want to test that Sear lever, and you can see this is correct function. We're pushing down on the end here just like this, and you see how that positively positions. The spring has stayed in place through our install. That is correct. And now if it functions just that well once we have pinned it, then we're going to be happy. And I think I overshot the mark just a little bit, so we're going to come back. You essentially want that pin to be flush approximately with its hole, and the BHSpringSolutions Sear lever pin definitely did not deform going in. It's still circular. Now we're going to check the function here, and it's normal. It's perfect. So now we have replaced the floating Sear lever with a positively positioned Sear lever. This is your engagement point with your Sear. See how that spring keeps that engagement point of the Sear lever up in the slide. It can't contact the Sear until now the trigger lever presses here. So that's going to enhance the safety here in our SA35 as we're now preparing for test firing. And we're going to reassemble, and we're going to explain one other modification that we are going to make and use prior to prior to all of our shooting and test firing. And that modification has to do with the grips. Springfield used a design on the grips, and I'm going to show you what the design does. The grips are admirably thin, but I want to show you something geometrically about the grips. You notice the High Powers grip frame is a rectangle. It is not a circle. But if you notice, if you take your hand and imagine you're holding a handgun and just wrap your hand around the grip frame. Now take a look at the shape of your hand. That's not a rectangle. That is a rectangle. So that's a hand wrapping around a rectangle. So these are thin. So now it's your hand wrapping around the smallest possible rectangle. BHSpringSolutions developed Masters grips, sorry about that, several years ago, and we used a little different profile, and I'm going to talk to you about that here for just a second. And that profile looks like, and I'm going to set these on here, and you're going to see a different shape. Now we take a look at the High Power from this angle, and that shape that my hand is now going to wrap around really has become approximately the shape my hand naturally wants to make. And even though maybe these grips are not as thin because they have an on-purpose center point of swell, has a center point of swell because your hand wants to feel that. And that's what these grips have done. We also have a contour here that makes a place where it feels natural for me to position my thumb, and that's the biggie reason why we are going to go ahead and change grips out, because I know I have the tendency that if a grip doesn't have a place for my thumb to be, I have a tendency to want it to go as high as I can. The implications, of course, with the SA35 is the ability to get that thumb and in the middle of firing engage the safety, because that enhanced safety is very available to my thumb. If I start riding it high, it would be easy to do. These grips tend to naturally position my thumb like this. I kind of learned years ago that if my grip is like this and I imagine I'm pointing that thumb at my target, usually I can hit it and or be very, very close to my target. So we're going ahead with these grips mainly for the thumb positioning contour of the grip. It's going to discourage me and other people shooting the handgun to avoid wanting to ride that thumb up underneath that safety, which of course we know with the Springfield SA35 is definitely a no-no. So this is the initial shooting configuration that we're going to have for the SA35. I'm going to go ahead and we see that my take up is about the same with the positively positioned Sear lever, and we still have just a little bit of over travel, but everything is essentially functioning the same as it was, and we are now ready for live test firing. Folks, thanks for watching, getting this far with us. I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC and BHSpringSolutions.com. Okay, so we just had our first 15 rounds through, and you probably just finished watching that on video. And we had a lot of a very short extracting empty shell case distances, and you also see how that original recoil spring wants to bow itself out, or trying to kind of bulge there. The one thing that could be helpful might be to lock the slide back for about a month and just leave it locked back and leave that spring compressed. But this is probably going to get better over time, but we don't know how long it takes to wear that spring in. And empty shell casings that just barely lop out of the pistol, or want to try to like go down your shirt, or that kind of thing, that's a little oversprung. We want a little bit more authority in the cycling, in the slide cycling, when we're shooting the high power. And the main reason is if you get to an underpowered round in the box, and you're only getting the extracted empty shell casings out, 2 foot, 3 foot, or barely lopping out of the pistol, you're right on the edge of a short cycle where the slide doesn't go all the way back as far as it needs to. So what we've just done is we've installed a BHSpringSolutions optimized 17-pound progressive recoil spring. We're going to keep the progressive aspects of the spring as a benefit, and keep the slide easy to rack, but we're going to take a little bit of heat off of that spring and see if we get some better slide cycling here on our next magazine. Hey guys, Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com, and this is the beginning of live fire testing of the Springfield SA35, as we have configured it and detailed that in a previous video. Actually, we had a little mishap with our technology out here on the range. I've already put 15 rounds through this Springfield SA35. We got a target out at 25 yards. The only thing I'm doing right now is we want to see what's going to be the how this spring setup that Springfield supplied in the pistol as OEM, how that's going to work. We got standard pressure ammunition, 115 grain Remington, real middle of the road kind of target ammunition. It's 36 degrees today. We have a wind chill's 28. It's just pretty well miserable for doing this kind of stuff today. I shot 15 rounds. It did not get recorded. And actually, I'm walking around here just to make sure the video camera is still recording now, and it is, because I don't want to do this 3 times. What I've got right here is I've got basically the ejection field. We would really like to see 5 to 10 foot, really 5 to 9, 5 to 8, in this range, ejection distance of empty shell casings. Reason being, if we get to a particularly weak loaded round in the box, and we'd like to not short cycle, and that means you have to have some margin. In other words, you need enough slide cycle speed to be getting the extracting empty shell casings a safe distance away from the pistol to avoid short cycling if you do get to a dud in the box. So really, about right here is about the limit, and I want to keep walking here. And really, the edge of my tripod, which you cannot see, that's about the outer limit of where I'd like to see these extracting empty shell casings landing. I'm going to shoot just a few more with the original recoil spring that Springfield provided in the rest of their setup, and then we're going to maybe change out real quick, see what we can do with maybe some alternative recoil springs. So here we go. Rack the slide, Marcus. About 2.5 feet from the shooting position of the pistol. And again, that's just a little bit oversprung for what we'd like to see as far as the slide cycle rate. I actually had a couple that would have went down my shirt if the coat would have been open. So we're going to clear and install a different BH recoil spring, and we're going to go with our new 17-pound progressive recoil spring, see where we end up as far as extraction distance, and I've got an 18 with me as well. And I think the fit of the spring in the handgun is going to be a lot more appropriate. We went with the 17-pound progressive. We want to stay with the characteristic of a spring that makes the slide reasonable to rack, and so we have. we're going to take a couple shots to see how this change out of recoil spring, how this helps or not our extraction distances here. That's about 3.5 feet. Much consistent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 feet. I consider 4 feet just the real minimum. This spring's probably going to break in, but we're getting into the sweet spot with the 17-pound. And again, this is a new handgun. Slide to frame fit is tight as it's ever going to be, except when it heats up. So we're going to finish this magazine, however many we have left. And then we're going to do a little accuracy shooting, and we'll get something to lean against for that. Okay, we're going to do another installment here. We've shot, I don't know, maybe 50 rounds here so far today. We're now going to do our first round of what we would call extreme testing. I have got 300 rounds loaded and moved our target into 7 yards, and this is going to be the extent of the testing today. We're 35 degrees. We've got wind coming straight from that direction. And wind chill's now 27 degrees. That's the conditions for this. We are going to attempt, with the configuration that we've got going on here in the Springfield SA35, this is going to be the first extreme heat. It's really the first extreme heat experience for this handgun, and that is our, the wind is something today. That is our ammo supply. And I think we are we'll see if that works out better for us here. Really nice slide cycle. digest it so far. That'll warm your hands up though. Rounds of 300, so we've gone through 210, and so far so good. That probably means that our slide to frame relationship is starting to get very, very tight because of the heat. So we may be reaching the upper limit. Out of 300 preloaded rounds, we've got 45 left to go. Rapid-wise, hands freezing, to see if I can make this thing hiccup 300 rounds consecutively, and no malfunctions, no stoppages. I gotta tell you, so far this is looking pretty good for the Springfield. Okay, folks, we're back out here on day one testing the Springfield SA35. We just did 300 consecutive rounds, no stoppages. That followed 40, I think I had a total of 49 rounds. We have loaded 351 rounds of ammunition in high power magazines. The intention is we're going to try to blow through this whole 351. That's going to be it for today. This is going to be a total of 700 rounds. We're still with the original TSOS barrel. We're configured with the Type 1 safety Sear lever from the start today. Heavy firing pin spring, 17-pound progressive BH Recoil spring. Really put us where we needed to be as far as the extraction distance And this is going to be if we can go through this 351 rounds consecutively, that will be the highest consecutive round count we've ever done in a high-power pistol without cooling. And basically, we've cooled now. Frankly, we're pretty well cooled down, but about as long as it took us to load up 351 rounds in magazines. So we're going to give this a try. We're really taking the Springfield SA-35 to some extreme heat ranges by doing this, and this is good test for the SA-35. Got a couple 13s, and then I think everything else is 15 rounds. That's our first malfunction, first stoppage of any kind in the Springfield. We've still got one in there. Actually, empty shell casing. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to stop right there, I think. We are going to go ahead at this point today. We're going to go ahead and we're going to cease testing, and we're going to inspect the firearm and see where we're at. Particularly, I want to take a look at the extractor, and that was our first fail. And we were 349, 359. We're somewhere around 360, 365. Round count total out of the handgun, and again, this is our first abnormality, our first fail of any kind or any stoppage. So again, we're going to go ahead and stop. We're going to go ahead and inspect the pistol and see if we can determine what was the cause of that fail to extract there, because that's not been the experience so far. We were not heated back up for that to be caused by any amount of heat. So we're going to go ahead and stop testing at this point.